What's going on, guys? Craig here from Dragon Star Hobbies, here with Zach today. Today we're going to be playing Modern. I'm going to be bringing Bant Nightfall, and Zach's going to be playing the new Death Shadow Jund. So we're going to go ahead and get to our deck list for you guys. We're going to start with mine and with Bant Nightfall, so here you go. Alright, so starting off with this deck, the bread and butter to play this deck is the fact that you're going to be a little heavier on your mana curve than a lot of other Modern decks, but you make up for that with playing 7 mana dorks. So you know your best one's going to be Noble Hierarch. It fixes all of our mana. The Exalted's always going to be relevant. So it's a great card, and basically whenever you're starting any game, you almost always want one of these in your opening hand. Unless you're playing as Burn and after game 1, it's not as great, but it is definitely one of the better turn ones for this deck. Moving on from that, for more of our 1-drops, you'll see we'll have our premier removal spell in these colors is Path to Exile. It just gets rid of everything that's kind of pesky. Even though we're a heavy creature deck and a lot of our creatures are going to be bigger than our opponents, it's nice to answer some of the more problematic cards like Tarmogoyf, because he can be a little bigger than the rest of our stuff.
Or Death Shadow.
Yeah, or Death Shadows, we'll see today. It's good. So moving on to our 2-drops, it's going to be a lot more disparity. We have a bunch of 2-ofs and some 1-ofs. And they're all there because we're playing a Collected Company deck, so we get a chance to see them more often, even when we're playing smaller numbers. Starting from the top, Spellskite. This is just an all-star. It's good against Infect. Mainly, it's good against people who are going to be playing like Bolt and Paths and Out Fatal Push. It just gives us protection when we're trying to either go for the combo with Knight, or maybe have something stuck under Spell Queller, and we don't want them to have it. That's the way we can protect it.
I mean, it's also a great way to hedge your bets against Burn
Yes.
main board. It's just that makes it so hard for them to actually win the game when you resolve a Spellskite main board after a Collected Company.
Yeah, it's the utilities. It's pretty good in this deck. So you know what our Scavenging uses. We have 2 of those. They help even against Burn. There's chances that they'll have creatures in the graveyard to give us a little life. It's not super relevant, but it always helps. It's actually going to be relevant in our match today. Playing against a deck that relies on Traverse.
And cycling Street Wraith is really big for the deck. You can just eat the Street Wraith every time.
Yeah, so hopefully we can get them off Delirium before it becomes a problem. And it's just good all around. Dredge is still a real deck. Living End just gives us a lot of reach, and I love Scavenging, as I loved it ever since it was printed. Moving on from that, Selfless Spirits was a standard all-star. It's in this deck because there's going to be anger decks or damnation, any of these type of decks are going to be coming around. You want Selfless Spirit just to protect against the mass board wipe, because it can be crushing if someone can completely remove your board, because you are a very creature heavy deck. Moving on from that, we have Voice of Resurgence, which is just a jack of all trades. The numbers fluctuate in some lists. You'll see 9, you'll see 2, you'll see 3, but it's just a good jack of all trades. It's a good chump blocker. It's a good finisher if you can get it off the field and get the token, and the token you have like 5 creatures. It's a 6/6.
It's a nightmare for control.
Yeah, you can once it's on the field, it's stuck. They can't do anything on my turn. So it allows me to cast things main phase without worrying about it unless they want to give me a token. It's been really good because a lot of decks you just play it on 2. They just they have to deal with it at some point, and it's still a 2-for-1 for them because they have to deal with the token as well, unless they can Path to Exile. From that, we have Kaswali Pride Mage. We actually play 2 in the main, and these guys have actually overperformed for me in testing and playing here at Dragon Star. The Exalted can be relevant, but mainly it's just the fact that you have a main board answer to artifacts and enchantments like Lantern Control players. We have an answer to Ensnaring Bridge, which is just huge. Grafdigger's Cage doesn't really matter a whole lot against us. Yeah, so Kaswali Pride Mage, it helps us against Grafdigger's Cage if they bring that inside board because they want to stop our Collected Company game plan. It just has a lot of main board implications.
It's great against every now and again blowing up that stray cranial plating from Affinity.
Yeah,
is
it's
awesome.
It's been fantastic. I actually thought it was going to be kind of bad, but it's been amazing almost every time I've had it on the field.
Well, and with that you have 6 Exalted triggers in the main board, which means you can start swinging in with like a 4/4 Knight of the Reliquary that's attacking for 6-7 damage, which is a lot.
Yeah, and it's pretty good because like you're saying, there's sometimes when you get in a board state where maybe you kind of flutter out on like big beefy creatures, but if you have like a Kasali and like a Noble and a Bird's out, your Bird just actually attacks for 2, which is sometimes relevant. Or if you have a Selfless Spirit out, you're attacking for if you have 2 of them out, 4 in the air. It's huge. Yeah, so moving on to our 3-drops of Knight of the Reliquary. It's the reason why you play the deck. It allows you to sacrifice the Force of Plains and get any land out of your deck, which is relevant. Sometimes you just go for the combo if you have retreat, but there's a lot of times you'll have Ghost Quarters, you're playing as Tron, And in the sideboard, we have a Bajuka Bog for Dredge or any graveyard decks, which is relevant if you want to get that instant speed and kind of getting rid of their graveyard. And then we also have another Ghost Quarter in the sideboard, just because Tron is kind of a tricky matchup, or if we're playing against any of the Scape Shift decks or Titan decks. Moving on from Night, we have Spell Queller, which you guys may know from Standard, has destroyed you probably many times in Standard. Well, I'm here to tell you that it's just as good in Modern. It can get bolted, but this card, if you have a control heavy meta, it's a monster because you can answer your opponent's Supreme Verdicts, which is just absolutely huge.
Backbreaking for any deck that's playing Supreme Verdict.
Yeah,
right? They want that turn 4, and when you Spell Queller it on turn 4, they're like, well, that's probably game.
So we have so many ways to, like, if anybody's playing sweepers in your meta, like, between Spell Queller, Selfless Spirit, and Voice of Resurgence,
and Collected Company.
Yeah, and Collected Company, we're so resilient to that. So like control decks even have a hard time beating us. So going to that, we have some more value creatures down here at the bottom with 2 Eternal Witness and 1 Tireless Tracker. The E-Wits are huge. They say someone spent time dealing with a problematic night, or maybe you just kind of ran out of gas and you have a Collected Company in the graveyard. It's whatever you want it to be. Like with this deck, people are going to have to remove some of your stuff, but E-Witness just goes, all right, well, here's more value, and you get instant speed when you cast a company. Like, it's been pretty good.
You can do things like getting back a Ghost Quarter against Tron, too, which is extremely useful.
Tireless Trackers in here is a 1-up. It's just a value engine against, like, the Juns and Abzans. Like, it just allows you to go, okay, here's a tracker, now all of my land drops are card draw, so you can kind of meet them when they're trying to do Liliana pluses or Inquisitions. They're starting to eat away at your hand. Tireless Tracker lets you get back that value. So he's been pretty great. Retreat to Coral Helm is the other piece of the combo for you guys who don't know. The way it works is with the landfall triggers letting you untap or tap a target permanent. Whenever the Knight of Reliquary gets a land, you're able to get your tap and untap, and then you can get keep making mana every turn you do this by getting your fetches. So you're able to get your Keswick Wolf Run, finish off the combo, pump your guy. Your Knight's already going to be big for the lands in the graveyard, and then you're going to give him +X+O, and he gets trample. So typically, if no one has an answer for it, you just kind of kill them in one turn.
You're missing Teamer Battle
right now. I know. It's pretty good. It doesn't happen as often, but it's just one of those things like kind of like Splinter Twin could do. They could kind of play a value game with you. Maybe have like a Snapcaster, Bolt Snapcaster, like any kind of things like that where they can beat down. Like we can do that with this deck. It can be a creature beat down. But at any point that you slip up and tap out, you can just go off with the retreat combo. So that's good. And then obviously, the Collected Company speak for themselves. Being able to have instant speed answers and just kind of playing on your opponent's end step's good. And you start getting your 2 creatures in play. And it's just another way of finding out of the Reliquary as fast as you possibly can in case if you ever retreat out and you want to do the combo.
Yeah, one of the things that makes this deck really dangerous for decks like Death Shadow Aggro is that most of the decks in these colors don't have haste, right? None of the creatures have haste. Well, with Collected Company, you have pseudo haste. It's not quite haste, but getting them in on the end step and then being able to attack the next turn means the Death Shadow players to be really careful about their life total and where they're putting themselves, because at any point and end of turn, Collected Company can just kill them.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to take a quick look at the mana base because it is kind of relevant when you're playing Knight of Reliquary. So let's go ahead and switch over to that. All right, so starting off with this, we're just going to go over the fetches really quickly. They're kind of easy. You're just playing 3 Wood of Foothills, 4 Windsweeps, 1 Flooded, 1 Misty. They pretty much allow you to get all of your colors that are relevant, and green's going to be your most relevant color. That's why we're already playing the 8 green fetches main, because we only be able to get our turn 1 forest sometimes if we don't want to shock, if we think we're playing a spur, and we already know. That way we can play one of our mana dorks on turn 1. So those are pretty self-explanatory. Moving on from that, we'll look at our actual fetchable mana. Our basics are 3 forest, 1 island, 1 plains. It's relevant if anyone else is playing Ghost Quarter strategies, or if you just want to get your basics, like we said, you're playing against Burn, or you're playing against like Death Shadow. Like sometimes you can do the math and you know that you're probably dead at X amount of health, and if you shock, you're just dead. It's like a Teamer Battle Ridge. So we'll see if that's relevant today. Your fetchable duels, you have 1 in each of the colors. You see your Breeding Pool, your Temple Guard, and your Hallowed Fountain. And then you have the Stomping Ground, which is relevant for the combo we just talked about. You have to fetch this last 2, you can get your red mana. That way you can pump the Keswick Wolf Run because it gets an X and then a red and a green. So yeah, moving on from that, Keswick Wolf Run, it's the finisher for the combo. Sometimes it's just going to be a value card. Like I've won games where I've just had a Bird of Paradise out and I've just attacked and then just pumped it every time and killed someone because I had no answer to it. And so like I said earlier, we have our main board Ghost Quarter. Again, Tron, any of the red green Scape Shift. Sometimes you play against people like Control and they have a Colonnade. You want to be able to blow that up. Like I said, we play a lot of mana dorks. Sometimes you just don't draw all the relevant stuff. You draw too many mana dorks and small creatures. So we have a Gavany Township. So at any point you can just kind of go wide and pump the team and go from there. And then the 1-up Horizon Canopy, because this card's just does everything. I mean, it's your mana fixing, but also can just, like I was saying earlier, you just draw a card anytime when you need it if you're floating out. All right, so that's my main board. We're going to go ahead and switch over to Zach's and let him show you guys his new Jund Death Shadow. So we'll go ahead and switch to that.
Okay, so here it is. All right, so we're going to start at the very beginning. We are running a lot more cards, like more non-land cards in the main deck than most decks, just because we get to cheat on mana, we get to cheat on a lot of things here with this deck. Our mana curve it tops out at 3. Like, there are very few times you're going to cast a Gore Clan Rampager or a Street Wraith to actually try and win the game. I've done it a couple times, and it is relevant, but it's not common at all. So typically your mana curve is going to cap out at 3. So to start off, we've got 8 cards that allow us to cycle through our deck and kind of get through. So we're basically running 52 cards. Mishra's Bauble is also really useful for checking, like when you have an opening hand with a fetch and a shock. It's great to bauble yourself, see what you've got on top so that you can decide whether you want to fetch shock and shuffle that away, or if you want to keep it on top and just play the shock instead and go from there. Street Wraith is fantastic for getting you card draw. It gets your life total down so you can get a Death Shadow out more quickly. It allows you to do a lot of different things. As you can tell with the Street Wraiths, I'm in the process of making this deck all mismatched so that I can really tilt my opponents, just because I love doing things like that. My Tarmogoyfs are mismatched, my Street Wraiths are mismatched. I'm going to try and get there. You know, with the new Modern Masters Death Shadows coming out, I'd like to get a couple of those in here. You know, just really have fun with that. On from that, we've got our actual 1-drops. So we got 4 of Death Shadow, the most powerful finisher in the deck. It kills people so quickly, and it's great because the more damage they do to you without actually killing you, the more they feel like they're helping you, which is also really tilting for them. I've had a few opponents tell me that. It's great to hear that they're helping me out. I like that, you know. I want them to help me. And making my Death Shadow, I've had a couple make my Death Shadow like a 12/12 and get me to 1 life just so that I can Temur Battle Rage on the next turn. And it just feels great watching them go, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And I'm like, yeah, you know.
That's such a hard card to play around.
There's I mean, you can't really play around it, right? You have to try and get them dead. But when I have the Temur Battle Rage and I'm swinging for 24, it's nice. And then we've got our Hand Disruption package. We've got 4 Inquisition, 4 Thoughtseize. I really like Thoughtseize more than I like Inquisition, just because Thoughtseize is the better card in this deck. You're getting your life total down. In fact, against burn you keep in all of your Hand Disruption, but you especially keep in the Thoughtseize. It's actually really good at getting your life total down in small increments so that you can kind of control that life loss while also keeping their cards out of their hand. Then you've got 4 Traverse, the Uvenwald. Traverse is amazing for getting your finishers, for getting utility creatures too. Like, there are a few times where you traverse for like a Street Wraith just so you can cycle, get your life total a little bit lower. There are times where you're going to traverse for Gore Clan to get trample. There are times you're going to get just your other finishers. It's always great, and it also lets you get sideboard tech. So especially when you side in like Fulminator Mages and things like that, you can go traverse and go get that Fulminator Mage against Tron and just blow up another land. So that's always really useful. Go down from that, we've got our removal spells. We've got Fatal Push and Tarfire. Tarfire is worse than Lightning Bolt in every deck except this one. In this deck, it represents sometimes an extra 2 points of damage on our Tarmogoyf. Sometimes you're Tarfiring yourself. So the interesting thing about this deck is that you have increments of life loss, right? You've got a few cards, like Fetch Shock is 3 life. You've got Shocks that are just 2 life. You've got a Tarfire to yourself that's also 2 life. Thoughtseize to yourself is 2 life. And then you've got just regular fetching for 1 life. So you can kind of control how much life you're losing, and Tarfire is helpful for that. It also kills some of the relevant creatures, not all of them. It kills a Nikado without a Plains, which is helpful. Fatal Push kills basically everything you want to kill in the deck.
Yeah, and then Tarfire, like, it's just your Delirium enabler too. It just counts for 2 on Delirium. And I've seen a lot of this deck played, and the more relevant thing is where you're just like, all right, have Delirium on 2, Traverse, Death Shadow.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, getting to remove a creature on turn 1 and then Traverse on turn 2 for your threat is really helpful, and Tarfire is one of the best ways for you to do that. 4 Tarmogoyfs, pretty self-explanatory. We're running a lot of different card types. In fact, we're running all but 1 card type that I think allowable. We don't have any enchantments here, but we've got everything else, tribals and all of that. So he gets really big really fast. Temur Battle Rage is your kind of surprise, hey, I win. out of nowhere, right? Temur Battle Rage has let me win games that I should not have any business winning whatsoever. They're ahead on board, they're ahead on basically everything. I'm almost dead, and I attack in with a Temur Battle Rage, and they can't stop it. So it's fantastic for that. Abrupt Decay is a great... So some decks are running 3 Fatal Push and 0 Abrupt Decay's main. I like the 1 Abrupt Decay just in the off chance that I have to hit like a Cranial Plating or a Blood Moon if I'm playing against Blue Moon, or an Ensnaring Bridge. It's really useful at getting rid of problematic permanents, and I think it's worth the 1 extra mana cost to have 1 in the main. I've seen a couple of different ways it's split. Some of them run 1 in the main, some don't. I like it. It's been really useful for me. Collective Brutality, also a 1 of in the main. It's really good for helping you enable Delirium. It removes creatures. It's another hand disruption spell, and it can be some life gain in dire situations. You typically don't want to gain life with this deck, but every now and again it can be useful for that. Gore Clan is a traversable trample giver, which is just fantastic. Blood rushing your Death Shadow basically means game in a lot of cases. Kolaghan's Command gets you back your threats. It lets you go ahead and get back a Street Wraith to cycle again. You can deal 2 damage. You can force discard on your opponent or yourself at instant speed. I mean, it's just fantastic. It is an all-star in the deck. Kolaghan's Command is to this deck what Cryptic Command was to Fairies, right? They use all the modes. We use all the modes in every combination, targeting any player, right? I've targeted myself for discard and the 2 damage before. It's just fantastic. And then finally you go to 2 Lily of the Veil. She's just great with hand disruption. She really tears apart your opponent's hand, removes creatures, and she actually ults pretty frequently in this deck, which is just backbreaking for almost any opponent.
Yeah, I'd imagine if you expect to see the mirror a lot in upcoming tournaments, this Lily is going to be better, just because if your opponent's like, all right, well, I only have actual, 2 sets of threats in my main board. I play one of those, and you don't really play answers in the main board. Like, I obviously it's playing the Abrupt Decay, which is going to help, and the Fatal Pushes, but like Liliana is just the extra, like, all right, here's the minus, kill your guy. Yeah. I'm just going to start plussing, so if you have anything relevant in your hand, it's just going to be gone. So I'm just going to start eating away at your hand and beat you.
Right, and they can't actually, like, traverse. If they've only got a Traverse in hand, they can't actually traverse for the Gore Clan or anything like that, because it just goes away from their hand.
Yeah.
So it's really useful at just getting things out and helping me with that. I have the other Lilies in the side just because they are very useful in some matchups. So we'll move on to the mana base. All right, so here's the mana base. It's honestly pretty self-explanatory. You've got a lot of shock lands and a lot of fetch lands just to get that life total down as fast as possible. Black is our main color, so we're going to have more black fetches than we do like the Wooded Foothills. The Wooded Foothills are actually the only non-black fetch lands. In way of basics, we've only got 2. We've got 1 swamp, 1 forest. Getting Traverse and getting those turn 1 Thought Seizes, Inquisitions, all that kind of stuff is really useful. You do actually want to fetch for your basics sometimes when you're playing against decks like Burn, right? Burn especially, they're going to get your life total down anyway, so you typically want to, game 2, like, fetch out the basics and then work your way down, let them work your life total down and kind of get cards out of their hand, and then you resolve your Death Shadow, and it makes it almost impossible for them to beat you. Bunch of fetches. We've got 1 Godless Shrine in the main, the only one I really want to highlight, and that is only used for a few cards in the sideboard, but it's definitely important to have those in the sideboard. I think I've been really enjoying, like, Ranger Vios is fantastic in the sideboard. That's really the only, like, outstanding thing in the mana base. Basically, it's just fetch, shock, and hurt yourself.
All right, we're going to go ahead and move to our roll and see who gets to go first.